The Galactic Empire had known peace for 847 years. 7 different species lived under its rule. Their borders were fixed. Their wars were forgotten. Their weapons gathered dust in museums. The High Council believed that progress caused conflict, so they stopped progress. They kept everything the same, year after year, century after century. Admiral Sung stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Calm. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served in the Imperial Navy for 30 years, but he had never fired a weapon in actual combat. None of his crew had. War existed only in history books and old recordings. His fleet of 40 warships patrolled the outer rim, the edge of known space. Beyond it lay the dead zone, a vast emptiness where no species traveled. There was nothing there. At least, that was what everyone believed. The alarm came at midnight ship time. Lieutenant rushed to her sensor station, her fingers moving across the controls. She was young, barely 25, with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She had joined the Navy because she wanted adventure. She had found only boredom. Until now. "Admiral," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "We have contact, unknown vessel. It came from the dead zone." Sung walked to her station and looked at the readings. His blood went cold. "That's impossible. Nothing lives out there." "The readings are confirmed, sir. One vessel, small, maybe the size of a transport shuttle." Paused, checking her data again. "But the power signature, Admiral, it doesn't make sense." "Explain." "The power output from that single ship exceeds our entire fleet combined." Silence fell over the bridge. Every officer stopped what they were doing. Every eye turned to the main, where a small dot moved slowly through the darkness of space. Sung took a deep breath. He had trained for moments like this his entire career. He had studied tactics, strategies, and protocols, but nothing had prepared him for genuine fear. He had never felt it before. Now it crawled up his spine like a cold snake. "Open a channel," he ordered. "All frequencies, all languages." The communications officer worked quickly. "Channel open, sir." "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Sung of the Imperial Navy. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself immediately." They waited. The seconds stretched into minutes. The small ship continued its slow approach, giving no response. Its hull was dark, almost black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Its shape was angular and strange, unlike any design in the Imperial database. "No response, sir," the communications officer reported. Sung gripped the railing in front of him. "Send the message again. Add a warning. Tell them we will take action if they do not comply." The message went out. Again there was no response. Lieutenant continued scanning the mysterious vessel. Her frown deepened with each passing moment. "Admiral, I'm detecting technology I cannot identify. The propulsion system. It's not using any method we know. No engine trails, no energy emissions. It's just moving." "Magic doesn't exist, Lieutenant." "I know, sir, but I don't have another explanation." Sung made a decision. He straightened his uniform and raised his chin. "Move the fleet into defensive formation. Prepare all weapons. If that ship makes any aggressive move, we will respond with full force." 40 warships shifted position. Weapons powered up for the first time in decades. Some of the targeting systems needed manual override because they had not been used in so long. Crew members who had never touched a weapon controls suddenly found themselves responsible for them. The mysterious vessel stopped. It hung in space, motionless, as if waiting, as if watching. Then its hull flickered. A light appeared on its surface, projected outward into the void. The light formed shapes, letters, words. The crew of the Eternal Calm stared in disbelief as a single word appeared in perfect script, the official language of the Empire. "Human." Sung felt his heart stop. He knew that word. Everyone knew that word. It was taught in schools as a warning, a lesson about what happened to species that could not control themselves. Humans had been a young species once. They lived on a small blue planet at the far edge of the galaxy. When the Empire first discovered them, thousands of years ago, they were primitive and divided. They fought wars among themselves constantly. They killed each other over land, resources, religion, and ideas. They built weapons of terrible destruction and used them on their own kind. The Empire had watched them from afar. Scientists studied their behavior. Diplomats debated what to do with them. In the end, the High Council made a decision. Humans were too dangerous to join galactic civilization. They were too violent, too unpredictable, too aggressive. A quarantine zone was established around their solar system. Monitoring stations watched them day and night. Then 300 years later, the monitoring stations went silent. When Imperial scouts finally investigated, they found nothing. The human was empty. Their colonies were abandoned. There were no bodies, no wreckage, no signs of battle. The humans had simply vanished. The Empire concluded that they had destroyed themselves. It was the logical answer. A species that violent could not survive. They must have finally gone too far, finally built a weapon too powerful, finally fought a war that ended everything. The galaxy moved on. Humans became a footnote in history, a cautionary tale told to children. Don't be like the humans. Control your anger, embrace peace, or you will destroy yourself. Now Sung stood on his bridge, staring at that single word, and realized that the Empire had been wrong. "Sir," Lieutenant whispered, "what do we do?" Sung did not answer. He could not answer. His mind was racing, trying to process what he was seeing. Humans were supposed to be extinct. They were supposed to be a closed chapter, a finished story. They were not supposed to appear from the dead zone in a ship more powerful than anything the Empire possessed. The mysterious vessel flickered again. More words appeared below the first. "We come in peace. We wish to talk." One of the younger officers laughed nervously. "Humans coming in peace, that's a contradiction." Nobody else laughed. The fear was too thick, too heavy. It filled the bridge like smoke, making it hard to breathe. Sung finally found his voice. "Send a message to Imperial Command. Priority 1, tell them." He paused, searching for the right words. "Tell them the humans have returned, and they want to talk." The message was sent. The fleet remained in defensive formation. The mysterious vessel waited patiently in the darkness. And across the galaxy, in council chambers and military headquarters, in homes and schools and public squares, the news spread like wildfire. The humans were back. The species that everyone thought had destroyed itself had somehow survived. They had been out there, somewhere beyond the dead zone, doing something, becoming something, for over 300 years. The peaceful galaxy, which had not known fear in centuries, suddenly remembered what fear felt like. Admiral Sung watched the dark ship on his. He thought about his training, his career, his life of comfortable boredom. He thought about the peace that had defined everything he knew. That peace, he realized, had just ended. Whatever came next, whatever the humans wanted, whatever they had become during their long absence, nothing would ever be the same again. The silent arrival had changed everything. The message from Admiral Sung reached the Imperial capital within hours. It traveled through relay stations, passed through security checkpoints, and finally arrived at the High Council chamber in the heart of the great city. By the time it arrived, rumors had already spread across half the galaxy. Grand Chancellor read the report 3 times. He was old, even by standards, with pale blue skin and eyes that had seen centuries pass. He had led the council for over 200 years. He had guided the empire through countless small problems, diplomatic disputes, and minor crises. But he had never faced anything like this. He called an emergency session. The 7 representatives gathered in the ancient chamber. Each one ruled a different species, a different civilization that had joined the empire long ago. They sat in floating chairs arranged in a circle, their faces projected on massive screens so everyone could see their expressions. Representative of the spoke first. He was a large creature covered in thick scales with 4 arms and a voice like grinding stones. "This is a mistake. Humans are extinct. Everyone knows this. Someone is playing a trick on us." "The sensor data is," Chancellor replied. "Admiral Sung's equipment recorded everything. The power signature alone proves this is not a trick. No species in the Empire possesses technology like what that ship displays." "Then it must be from outside the Empire," said representative of the. She was thin and graceful, with silver hair that floated around her head like a cloud. "Perhaps another civilization from beyond our borders." The ship identified itself clearly. It used our language. It said one word: human. Silence fell over the chamber. The representatives looked at each other, fear visible in their alien eyes. For centuries, they had lived in comfort and safety. They had forgotten what it meant to face the unknown. Chancellor raised his hand. "We must consult the archives. We must understand what we are dealing with." The archives were stored deep beneath the capital city. They contained records going back thousands of years, documenting every event, every species, every contact the Empire had ever made. Most of these files had not been accessed in centuries. There was no need. Nothing ever changed. The file on humans was buried under layers of security. It took several hours to unlock it. When the data finally appeared on the Council's screens, they read in horrified silence. The humans had been discovered 4,000 years ago. They lived on a planet they called Earth, the third world orbiting a small yellow star. They had not yet developed space travel when the Empire found them. They were still fighting wars on their own world, killing each other with primitive weapons. The Empire scientists had studied them carefully. They recorded everything: the human wars, their religions, their art, their science, their endless conflicts. They noted that humans were physically weak compared to most galactic species. They were short-lived, rarely surviving more than 100 years. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. But they were dangerous. The reports described humans as relentlessly aggressive. They fought not just for survival, but for ideas, beliefs, and emotions. They held grudges for generations. They invented new weapons faster than any species the Empire had ever seen. In just a few thousand years, they had gone from throwing rocks to splitting atoms. The Empire's conclusion was clear. Humans must never be allowed to join galactic civilization. They were too unstable, too violent, too unpredictable. If they ever reached the stars, they would bring their wars with them. They would spread conflict across the galaxy like a disease. So the Empire had quarantined them. Ships were posted around their solar system. Any vessel trying to leave was to be destroyed. Any attempt at contact was forbidden. The humans were left alone to either evolve past their violence or destroy themselves. For 3,000 years, the monitoring stations watched. They recorded human wars, human plagues, human disasters. They watched humans build weapons that could destroy their entire planet. They waited for the inevitable end. Then 300 years ago, everything went silent. The monitoring stations stopped transmitting. The quarantine ships found nothing when they investigated. Earth was empty. The human colonies on nearby planets were abandoned. There were no bodies, no wreckage, no signs of what had happened. The Empire sent investigation teams. They searched for decades. They found nothing. Eventually, the High Council declared humans extinct. The quarantine was lifted. The file was closed. Everyone assumed the humans had finally destroyed themselves. It was the only explanation that made sense. A species that violent could not survive forever. They had probably built some ultimate weapon and used it on themselves. It was tragic, perhaps, but expected. Now Chancellor stared at the old reports and realized how wrong they had been. "They didn't destroy themselves," he said quietly. "They left." Left, Representative growled. Left where? There is nothing beyond the dead zone. No stars, no planets, nothing for thousands of light years. Perhaps that was the point. Chancellor stood up from his chair. They knew we were watching them. They knew we had quarantined them. They knew we considered them dangerous, so they found a way to leave without us knowing. They went somewhere we would never look. The thought was terrifying. Humans had escaped the quarantine. They had survived in the void between galaxies where no other species could live. They had spent 3 centuries doing what? Building, learning, growing. Representative's voice was barely a whisper. What have they become? Nobody had an answer. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to attack immediately, to destroy the human vessel before more arrived. Others wanted to establish contact, to learn what the humans wanted. A few suggested running, abandoning the outer rim, pulling back to more defensible positions. In the end, Chancellor made the decision. We will meet with them. 1 ship, neutral ground, no weapons. We need to know what we are dealing with before we take any action. This is madness, protested. You would meet with monsters. I would meet with an unknown, replied. And I would prefer to make that unknown an ally rather than an enemy. Because if that ship is any indication of what humans can do now, I do not think we can win a war against them. The arrangements were made. A message was sent to the human vessel, proposing a meeting at an abandoned station in unclaimed space. The response came quickly, imperfect once again. Agreed, we will come. Chancellor prepared to travel to the meeting personally. His advisors begged him to send someone else, anyone else. He refused. If the Empire was about to face its greatest challenge in 1,000 years, he needed to see the enemy himself. He did not sleep that night. He stood at his window, looking up at the stars, wondering which distant point of light hid the humans who had returned from the dead. He wondered what they wanted. He wondered if the peaceful galaxy he had spent his life protecting was about to end. Deep in his heart, he already knew the answer. The meeting place was an old station floating in empty space. It had been built centuries ago as a trading post, then abandoned when the trade routes changed. Now it drifted alone, its lights dark, its corridors empty, waiting for visitors who never came. Until today. Chancellor arrived first. His ship docked carefully, and he walked through the dusty halls with only 2 guards at his side. He had ordered everyone else to stay behind. If this was a trap, he did not want to lose more lives than necessary. The main chamber still had power. Emergency lights flickered on as entered, casting long shadows across the metal walls. He stood in the center of the room and waited. He did not wait long. The human ship arrived silently. One moment the docking port was empty. The next moment the ship was there, attached to the station as if it had always been, had not seen it approach. His sensors had not detected it. The technology behind that kind of movement was beyond anything he understood. The airlock opened. Footsteps echoed through the corridor, straightened his robes and prepared to meet humanity for the first time. The human who entered was not what he expected. She was small, much smaller than the terrifying warriors the old reports had described. She had dark hair cut short and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of centuries. She wore a simple uniform, black with no markings except a small symbol on her chest, a blue circle with a single white dot in the center. She walked alone. No guards, no weapons visible, no protection of any kind. Chancellor, she said, her voice was calm and clear. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I am captain of the Human Explorer Corps. Studied her face. He had expected anger, aggression, the famous human violence that the old reports had warned about. Instead, he found something else, something harder to define. She looked tired but not weak, old but not physically aged. She looked like someone who had seen too much and survived anyway. You have been watching us, said. It was not a question. Chose to be honest. There was no point in lying to someone who could appear out of nowhere. We believed your kind extinct. Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The smile was bitter, filled with memories that could not imagine. We know what you believed. We found your monitoring stations. We found your quarantine ships. We read your reports. Felt cold. You know about the quarantine. We know everything. Took a step forward. The guards behind reached for their weapons, but she ignored them completely. We know you watched us for 3,000 years. We know you decided we were too dangerous to join your civilization. We know you planned to destroy us if we ever tried to leave our solar system. Those decisions were made long before my time. They were correct. Blinked, he had expected accusations, anger, demands for justice. He had not expected agreement. Continued walking until she stood directly in front of him. Up close, she seemed even smaller, even less threatening. But her eyes held something that made one to step back, something ancient and powerful. We were everything you feared, she said. We were violent, we were divided, we were self-destructive. Your scientists studied us and concluded that we would destroy ourselves. They were almost right. We came very close many times. But you survived. We survived. Turned away, looking out through a small window at the stars beyond. We knew you were watching. We knew about the quarantine. We knew that if we tried to leave, your ships would destroy us. So we found another way. The dead zone. Yes, we built ships that could survive the void between galaxies. We loaded our entire species onto those ships. We left Earth behind and traveled into the darkness where you would never look for us. She paused. It took us 50 years just to reach safe space. Many died on the journey. Those who survived changed. Found his voice. What did you become? Was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, almost sad. We became what we always had the potential to be. Without other species to fight, we had to face ourselves. We had to look at our violence, our anger, our endless need for conflict. We could not destroy those things. They were part of us. So we learned to control them. We learned to direct them. We turned our aggression outward against the challenges of survival, against the void itself. She turned back to face him. 300 years, Chancellor. 300 years of struggle, growth, and change. We are not the humans you quarantined. We are not the violent children who fought wars over patches of dirt. We are something new. Then why have you returned? His expression changed. The sadness disappeared, replaced by something harder, something urgent. Because something is coming, something from the deep dark, from beyond even where we traveled, something that makes our old wars look like children playing with toys. Felt his blood freeze. What do you mean? We detected them 5 years ago. Organic vessels, massive beyond anything you can imagine. They consume everything in their path. Stars, planets, entire civilizations. They are moving toward this galaxy. They will arrive within months. That is impossible. Our sensors would have detected. Your sensors are designed to find what you expect to find. You have lived in peace so long that you have forgotten what danger looks like. His voice grew urgent. We came to warn you. We came to offer our help. But I need you to understand something, Chancellor. She stepped closer and saw the fire burning behind her tired eyes. We will not ask permission to defend our home. This galaxy is where our species was born. Earth may be empty, but the stars around it are still ours. If you accept our help, we will fight beside you. If you reject us, we will fight alone. But we will fight. That is what we are. That is what we have always been. Stood frozen. His mind raced through everything he knew, everything he had been taught about diplomacy and peace and careful management. None of it applied here. He was facing something entirely new, a species that had stared into the abyss and come back stronger. The Council will need to discuss this, he finally said. Then discuss quickly, turned and began walking back toward her ship. You have weeks, maybe days. When the enemy arrives, there will be no time for debate. She paused at the doorway and looked back one final time. I hope you make the right choice, Chancellor. I truly do. Because if you don't, everything you've built will burn, and there will be no one left to remember that you ever existed." Then she was gone. Her ship detached from the station and vanished, disappearing as silently as it had arrived. Stood alone in the empty chamber, surrounded by dust and shadows. He thought about words, about the warning she had delivered, about the choice that now faced him. He thought about 800 years of peace, and wondered if it had all been a lie. The High Council rejected the human warning. Chancellor argued for hours. He described his meeting with Captain. He repeated her warning about the coming threat. He begged his fellow representatives to listen, to prepare, to at least consider the possibility that the humans were telling the truth. They refused. Representative laughed at the idea of an enemy from beyond the galaxy. "Fear tactics," he declared. "The humans want to scare us into accepting them. They want to use our fear to gain power." Representative agreed. "We have maintained peace for 800 years. We have sensors across the entire galaxy. If something was coming, we would know." "The humans knew," insisted. "Their technology is beyond ours. If they say something is coming, then let them deal with it alone," crossed his four arms. "We owe them nothing. They rejected our ways. They fled rather than accept our guidance. Whatever happens to them now is their own fault." The vote was unanimous. The humans were ordered to leave Imperial space. No alliance would be formed. No assistance would be given. The Empire would continue as it always had, peaceful and isolated, trusting in the stability that had protected it for centuries. Admiral Sung received the orders with a heavy heart. He had spoken with Captain through communication channels over the past weeks. He had learned about the human journey through the void, about their struggles and their transformation. He had begun to respect them, even admire them. Now he was ordered to escort them away like unwanted guests. His fleet surrounded the single human vessel, 40 warships against one small ship. It should have felt like a show of strength. Instead, it felt like embarrassment. Everyone on the bridge knew that the human vessel could destroy them all without effort. Captain Sung transmitted, "I have received orders from the High Council. You are to leave Imperial space immediately. I am sorry." There was a long pause. Then's voice came through the speakers, calm as always. "I understand, Admiral. We expected this. Fear of the unknown is natural. Your leaders have lived in safety for so long that they cannot imagine real danger." "Is the threat real, the enemy you warned about?" "Yes." "Then why do you not force us to listen? You have the power." Another pause. "Because that is not who we are anymore. We do not conquer, we do not force. We protect, we warn, we offer help, but we cannot make choices for others." Her voice grew sad. "We will leave as ordered, but Admiral, please remember what I told you. When the enemy comes, and it will come, we will return. Look for us in your darkest hour." The human vessel turned and moved toward the edge of Imperial space. Sung watched it go, feeling as though he was witnessing the end of something important. 3 weeks later, the enemy arrived. It started at the outer rim in a system called a colony world with 2 million inhabitants, known for its beautiful oceans and peaceful fishing villages. The distress call came at dawn. Unknown vessels approaching. Massive organic structures. They're not responding to hails. They're heading straight for the planet. Send help. Please send help. Then the transmission cut off. Admiral Sung was the first to arrive. What he found would haunt him for the rest of his life. The enemy was beyond description. Massive creatures that looked like living ships, their bodies covered in teeth and claws and weapons that seemed to grow from their flesh. They moved through space like predators, hunting, consuming, destroying. Their smallest vessels were the size of Imperial battleships. Their largest ones were bigger than moons. Was already burning. The oceans boiled under energy beams. The cities crumbled under bombardment. 2 million people screamed and died while Sung watched helplessly. "All ships engage," he ordered. His fleet opened fire. Weapons that had not been used in centuries finally found targets. Missiles flew. Energy beams struck. For a moment, Sung felt hope. Then the enemy turned. The battle lasted 7 minutes. 40 Imperial warships faced a single organic vessel, one of the medium-sized ones. It destroyed them with casual ease, swatting them aside like insects. Shields meant nothing. Weapons did nothing. The enemy simply absorbed everything and kept coming. Sung's flagship was the last to fall. As his ship burned around him, as his crew died at their stations, he managed one final transmission. "They're real, the humans were right, God help us all." Then his ship exploded, and everything went dark. He woke up 3 days later in a medical bay he did not recognize. The ceiling above him was smooth and white, and gentle light filled the room. He tried to sit up, but his body refused to cooperate. "Easy, Admiral," a familiar voice. Captain appeared beside his bed, looking tired but calm. "You were badly injured. Our medical system saved your life, but you need time to recover." "My crew." "We saved as many as we could, about 200 survivors." Sung closed his eyes. 200 out of thousands. The weight of that number pressed down on his chest like a stone. "The enemy?" he asked. "Still advancing. They've destroyed 14 systems so far. The High Council has finally agreed to accept our help." Sung opened his eyes. Through a nearby window he could see stars, but among those stars he saw something else. Ships. Thousands of them, human ships. They were not small like the scout vessel that had first appeared. These were warships, massive and powerful, bristling with weapons that Sung could not identify. They moved in perfect formation, a wall of steel and fire stretching across the void. "You came back," he whispered. "We never really left," smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. "We were waiting, Admiral, watching. We knew the Council would refuse. We knew the enemy would come. And we knew that when everything seemed lost, when your people finally understood the danger, they would need us." She leaned closer. "So watch now, Admiral. Watch what humanity has become." The human fleet moved forward. The enemy turned to face them, confident in their strength, hungry for more destruction. The two forces met in the space between burning worlds. And the humans showed no mercy. Ships that could disappear and reappear anywhere in space. Weapons that tore through organic armor like paper. Tactics that changed and adapted faster than any enemy could respond. The humans fought like nothing Sung had ever seen. Coordinated, relentless, unstoppable. The battle lasted 6 hours. At the end, the enemy fleet was destroyed. Every single organic vessel, from the smallest scout to the largest behemoth, had been torn apart, burned away, and scattered across the void. The humans had lost ships too, their casualties numbered in the thousands, but they had won. They had done what the entire empire could not. They had stopped the darkness. When it was over, Captain made a broadcast that echoed across every channel in the galaxy. "We protect our own. Whether you accept us or not, this galaxy is our home too, and we will not let it fall." Sung lay in his medical bed, tears streaming down his face. He wept for his lost crew, for the destroyed worlds, for the centuries of peace that had left the Empire helpless. But he also wept with something else, something he had never expected to feel. Hope. The aftermath changed everything. Chancellor resigned the day after the battle. He stood before the High Council, his face pale and his voice tired, and admitted that he had failed. He had warned them about the humans, had begged them to listen, but he had not pushed hard enough. He had allowed fear and tradition to win over truth and survival. His successor, a young named, was different. She had watched the recordings of the human fleet destroying the enemy. She had studied the reports of human technology, human tactics, human determination. She understood that the galaxy could not go back to the way things were. The High Council was reformed. Representatives who had voted against the human alliance were removed. New leaders took their places, leaders who understood that survival required change. For the first time in centuries, the Empire began to evolve. Admiral Sung recovered slowly. His injuries had been severe, but human medical technology was far beyond anything the Empire possessed. Within weeks, he was walking again. Within months, he was back in uniform. He was appointed as the first Imperial liaison to humanity. It was a new position, created specifically for the new alliance that was forming between the two civilizations. His job was to travel to human space, to learn about them, and to build bridges between two very different peoples. The journey to human territory took 3 days. Sung traveled alone, aboard a human shuttle piloted by a young officer named Minyu. The young man was friendly and curious, asking endless questions about the Empire, about culture, about the war. "Were you scared?" Minyu asked at one point, "when you faced the enemy alone?" Sung considered the question. "Yes, I was terrified. We were not prepared for real war. We had forgotten what it meant to fight, to die, to lose." Minyu nodded slowly. "We never forgot. Out there in the void, we faced things that made us want to give up every day. Cold, hunger, despair. But we kept going. It's who we are." When they arrived at the human, Sung finally understood what that meant. The humans had built something impossible. In the void between galaxies, where no stars shone and no planets orbited, they had created an entire civilization. Massive stations floated in the darkness, connected by bridges of light. Artificial suns provided warmth and energy. Farms stretched across metal plains, feeding billions. And beyond the stations, there were ships. More ships than Sung had seen in his entire life. Warships and transports, scouts and carriers, an endless fleet that had crossed the empty dark and returned stronger than ever. Captain met him at the main station. She looked different now, less tired, more at peace. The weight that had pressed down on her during their first meeting seemed lighter. "Welcome to New Haven," she said, "the capital of the Human Confederation." Sung walked beside her through the corridors, his eyes wide with wonder. He saw humans everywhere, working, laughing, arguing, living. They were so different from the violent primitives described in the old imperial reports. They were civilized, orderly, purposeful. But underneath that calm surface, he could still see the fire, the determination, the endless drive to survive and grow and become more. "How did you do it?" he asked. They stood before a viewport that showed a human city floating among the stars. Lights glittered in the darkness like captured stars. "How did you become this?" Considered the question for a long moment. "We stopped running from what we were. Violence, ambition, stubbornness. These things were not flaws to be erased. They were tools to be mastered. Every war we fought taught us something. Every failure made us stronger. You could have conquered the galaxy when you returned. With your technology, your ships, your weapons. You could have taken everything." "We could have," agreed. "But conquest is not strength. Building something worth protecting, that is strength." She turned to face him. "Your empire kept species apart to prevent conflict. We learned to channel conflict toward growth. Both approaches have merit. Perhaps the future lies somewhere between." In the months that followed, humanity formally joined the Galactic Empire. Not as subjects, as Sung had expected, but as partners. The terms were negotiated carefully, with respect on both sides. The humans would share their technology, but slowly, carefully, so that the other species could adapt. They would help defend the galaxy, but they would not control it. Chancellor announced the alliance in a galaxy-wide broadcast. "Today, we welcome humanity back to the galactic community. They left us long ago, labeled as dangerous and unstable. They return as our protectors and our friends. We were wrong about them, and we are grateful for the chance to correct that mistake." The reaction was mixed. Some species celebrated, eager to learn from the humans and grow stronger. Others feared what might come next, worried that human aggression would eventually turn against them, but most simply felt relief. The enemy had been defeated. The galaxy was safe. And for the first time in centuries, there was hope for something better than endless, stagnant peace. Admiral Sung returned to Imperial space after 6 months. He carried with him knowledge, plans, and dreams. He had seen what humans could build. He had learned what humans could teach. And he had made friends among them, people like Captain and Officer Minyu who showed him that different did not mean wrong. On his first night back, he stood on the observation deck of his new flagship, looking out at the stars. They seemed different now, brighter, fuller, more alive. A young officer approached him nervously. "Admiral, the crew is wondering, what are they like, the humans?" Sung smiled. It was the first genuine smile he had felt in a long time. "They are what we forgot how to be. They are survivors, fighters, dreamers. They face the darkness and refuse to look away." "Are they dangerous?" "Yes, very dangerous." Sung turned to face the young officer. "But they are dangerous in the way that fire is dangerous. It can burn you, destroy you, reduce everything to ash. Or it can warm your home, light your path, and keep the shadows at bay. The choice is yours." The young officer looked confused. "I don't understand." "You will, give it time." Sung looked back at the stars. "The galaxy is changing, Ensign. The peace we knew is over. What comes next will be harder, messier, and more dangerous than anything we've faced before. But it will also be more alive, more real, more worth fighting for." And throughout the galaxy, in council chambers and military academies, in homes and schools and public squares, a saying spread. It started as a joke among soldiers, then became a proverb among civilians, and finally transformed into a truth that everyone understood. When the darkness comes, pray the humans come with it. The galaxy had been afraid of humanity once. Now they understood the truth. Humans were not monsters to be feared or children to be controlled. They were something more complicated, more dangerous, and ultimately more necessary. They were protectors. And as long as the darkness threatened, they would stand guard. The new dawn had arrived. The future was uncertain, challenging, and full of risk. But for the first time in 800 years, it was also full of possibility. Humanity had come home, and nothing would ever be the same.